Hi, we'd like to welcome you to another a series of webinars designed for departments of transportation. I'm Terry Bills, and I'm the Transportation Industry Manager here at Esri. And today we have a full crew of presenters joining us for this webinar. To begin, we have John Nystrom from our Transportation Sales Team, and he's the lead for the Operations Centers solutions. And joining John is Tom Brenneman and Eric Rodenberg, both solution engineers from our transportation sales team. And today's webinar is focused on how departments of transportation can utilize off-the-shelf capabilities in ArcGIS together with existing templates and data services from our marketplace to design and build what we would call the next generation traffic operations dashboard. Before we begin, I'd like to point out that we're recording this webinar, and while everyone will be on mute, there will be time for question and answers at the end of the presentation. You can type your questions into the question box, and we'll try to answer as many as time allows. And additionally, the slides that you'll see, which are part of this webinar, will be available to you on the GeoNet group, Departments of Transportation. Since we'd like to cover a number of examples of both traffic operations dashboards and applications, let's dive right in. So John, are you ready?
I am, yes.
Okay, it's over to you.
Thanks, Terry, and welcome everyone on the phone for the webinar. Wanted to spend a couple minutes talking to you about a vision for building operational capability in your traffic management centers. So John Nystrom, as Terry said, I'm leading our transportation operations team, and I've supported Esri for about 15 years with the emergency management and emergency operations space. So we're increasingly seeing operations centers focus around location and a map to bring together many different types of data for managing events and for managing traffic conditions. So we want to talk to you a little bit about this and then get to some cool demos to show you how to leverage the platform to do that. So the goal is to help the communities build next generation traffic management systems. We want you to leverage your existing investments and data from your partners, as well as bring in different feeds of information that you currently own and operate. The goal here is to build a system that readily enables you to respond to incidents on your network and help keep the flow of traffic going. So we think location is key to this, and increasingly we're seeing maps be the center of the operations center to kind of get some data put together. So transportation and traffic data is fundamentally geospatial. Managing this data requires modern GIS. Most of the states have access to this software that we're talking about, and you can leverage your existing enterprise agreements. By taking these platforms, you can bring in data from many different systems, automate some of your SOPs and some of the analysis that's going on your networks, and report by exception. You have a tremendous amount of data, and we want kind of real-time analytics to allow you to report by exception so you can weed the appropriate data out so people can focus on problems. So operational GIS leverage existing investments. You have your local governments that have transportation departments that are leveraging GIS today. You have state transportation departments that are leveraging GIS. Police and fire departments. They can send in transactional updates to your GIS portal that will be running a series of different maps and dashboards for specific groups. So you don't want everybody to have access to every piece of information. You want to build products that are actually designed for specific groups in your transportation operations center. So we're increasingly seeing you have the operations folks that are in there every day. You have the folks that are responding to events and working with your state highway patrol and your highway safety patrol to get the crashes cleared from the transportation network. You have maintenance on the system, potholes and other maintenance issues that or cameras that might be down. The map can tell you where these maintenance issues are, and then help you get out to respond and to fix those problems. And then ultimately, you want to keep a history of this GIS data so you can do decision and capacity planning on your network going forward. A modern GIS portal allows you to keep all this information so you can do those types of activities. So once you have your GIS portal stood up, you have all of these COTS-based applications that are free to use, out of the box, and essentially pretty easy to stand up. So you have viewer apps that are specific for a responder, planning apps if you are doing capacity planning on your network, analytical apps, or do you want your crowdsourcing apps where you can have your citizens out collecting pothole information, or things like Survey 123 and our field apps that you can allow your responders to actually take some real-time field-based collection while they're responding to crashes. So instead of just kind of talking about this, we wanted to get quickly into the demos and show you these tools in action. So I think, Tom, you're up next.
All right, I'll share my screen. And Terry, can you see, or John, can you see my screen there with Indiana?
Yes,
Yep.
yes, we can.
Okay, great. So I've got a couple of dashboards that I want to show you here, and we've got two for Indiana, and then Eric is going to show you one for Colorado, and then I'll show you some analytics and other kind of experimental work that we're doing at the end in this area. So this particular dashboard is, as you can see, it's a web-based dashboard. So we're viewing it here in our browser, and it's giving us a real-time view for all of the state of Indiana. I'm going to just click here because there's a lot going on throughout the state. It's kind of a snowy day, so I'm going to zoom us in here on the Indianapolis area. It's a little bit easier to see kind of what's happening in that particular area. But I want to start off by just saying that this dashboard contains a lot of different kinds of data. First of all, we're dealing with Waze data that's coming in through a partnership agreement with the Waze Connected Citizens program. So the organization would join the Waze Connected Citizens program. It's a free program of data exchange with Waze, and Waze provides data feeds that you can pull in and use in a dashboard like this. Those data feeds that they provide come in the form of Waze alerts, and you can see those here in this list. We've got a summary over here on the right that has all of the current Waze alerts that are happening in the map. I'm filtering these based on a time range. So I was just looking at the last 10 minutes. If I look at 20 minutes, I can see these numbers change based on the time frame that I'm looking at there in the map. So Waze alerts that are coming in, this widget here within the dashboard is showing just a summary of those. Most of them are hazards. There's some accidents. And then down here in the bottom, we're seeing the overall frequency of reports coming in from Waze. So just to be clear on what's happening, this Waze data, the Waze application is a mobile application that people have on their phone. As they're reporting incidents to Waze, Waze is providing that data through a data feedback to us, and then we can take that, incorporate that into the GIS, and display it here in a dashboard like this. So we're pulling together lots of different data. The data sets are Waze data, that Waze feed. Another one, the green lines that you see out here, that's the Esri traffic service. So that's the second data source that we're pulling in. And then the last data source that I'll show you here in a little bit is project areas, where the DOT's project areas are and where their traffic cameras are. So let's look at some of the different ways that we can work with this data. One of the ways is we can just click on one of these widgets. And I should say that this dashboard is, before I get going too far, this is a configurable dashboard. This is based on our operations dashboard technology. So there's no code that was used to build any of this. It's all configured based on these different data feeds. So I configured it so that when I click on this bar chart down here and show accidents, I can see those accidents. If I click on one, it'll zoom me in on that particular area, and I can see here that I'm getting some agreement between the data, right? that this is indicated as an accident from Waze, but the Esri traffic service is showing me that that whole area is congested, and it's slow traffic through that particular area. So it's important to be able to bring in these different data feeds to get multiple points of information for any one of these areas. I can also just filter out all of this data to see everything that's happening just in my current map area, and I can see lots of people are reporting the accident at these locations, and there's a couple of accidents that have happened here. So these aren't unique accidents, these are unique accident reports. And so we can see that in the map, and we can zoom in on those areas and see more detail about what's being reported in those particular area. Now, I can also see data that's coming in and analyze that data as it's coming into the system for what data is in a work zone. So I mentioned that's some data that's coming from the DOT that's available. And the important thing about this, so the work zone's coming from the DOT, this just indicates the sections of road where work is happening. Waze is providing a feed of where these alerts are happening. And you can see right here that we have accidents in work zones. This data is all coming into to ArcGIS Enterprise and being processed with our server technology, GeoEventServer. GeoEventServer can combine those two pieces of information and tag alerts that are happening within our work zone so that we can get an indicator like this that tells us that we have an accident that's currently happening within a work zone. So if we want to filter out and just see accidents, I can click on this tab here and show accidents in work zones, and I can click on those and actually I'll give it a second to catch up there. That's actually the accident that we were looking at a little bit earlier. There it is. There's that accident that's happening. There's actually a work zone in that particular area. So there's a lot going on in that area. So we can filter out all of our incidents based on what's in and out of a work zone by dynamically combining this data on the fly as it's coming into the system. So this solution here definitely does include GeoEventServer and our ArcGIS Enterprise technology. Now, just to show you a little bit more about how you can drill in on this data, I'll go back to the Indianapolis area and we'll click on hazards here. So we can just filter out. We've got a lot of hazards that are being reported on the map. Like I said, it's a snowy day here in Indiana, so there's lots of hazards being reported on the map. But we can drill into the details on those hazards, and I'll open up and expand this this widget here. This is showing us a detailed view of the hazards, and you can see one of them is that there's a hazard on the road, and I can click on that and go back to the map and see exactly where there's a hazard that's being reported on the roadway. So maybe I can go into that particular area and maybe dispatch someone to that area to remove that hazard that's on the roadway. So in an operational sense, it makes it easier for us to drill into these particular areas where the information that we're interested in this case, an object that's in the roadway, and send someone out to actually deal with that object in the roadway. Then you can see as I zoom in here, I get additional details from that Esri traffic service that tells us kind of what's happening on all the surface roads from a traffic perspective, and whether traffic is flowing easily in those particular areas. We have pictures, cameras that are coming in from the DOT that we've incorporated here as well. And you can see actually it's a little fuzzy because of the rain and sleet that's coming down, but you can see there it is free-flowing traffic in that particular area. So the point here is that with this dashboard, we've combined together a whole lot of data from the DOT, Esri, Waze, and we've combined all of that in one place. We've done some analytics on it to figure out when something's happening in a work zone. That's happening by our GeoEventServer. And we're also looking at other things like where our top travel delays are. So Waze is reporting actual travel delays that are happening on the roadway, I can see where those are and zoom in on those sections of the map as well. So combining a lot of data and doing analytics on that data as it comes in to help someone in the operations center get a real view of what's happening out there in the real world. So there's a lot of technology and a lot of data that's being pulled together in this particular dashboard. Like I mentioned, the GeoEventServer technology that's helping us do this real-time analytics on this data as it's coming into the system. But I wanted to show you that you can actually work with a lot of this data without maybe as much of this technology. If you wanted kind of a light version of this application that maybe didn't do the real-time analytics, but just showed maybe some of the Waze alerts and the Esri traffic data, that's pretty easy to do and straightforward. In fact, you could do all of that with just an ArcGIS Online subscription. Our partnership with Waze has really improved to the point where Waze has published their live alerts layer on our marketplace. So this is marketplace.arcgis.com, and that's where the Waze live alerts lives. And all that you need to do to have access to this is have a data sharing agreement with Waze, with their Connected Citizens program. And once you have that, then you can use this this free service through the marketplace. So there's no cost for this. You just need to agree to those agreements with Waze and their Connected Citizens program. And then you can create a very similar dashboard. This is one that was created for the city of Fishers, which I live in Noblesville right up here. This is the town just down there, the city right down the road from me. And the city of Fishers has put together this dashboard for showing some of these real-time alerts and Esri traffic, this Esri traffic service. So as we zoom in here on the map, you can see that the alerts in that particular area update. I can filter them all out and say, okay, we've got a car that stopped on the road right here. We've got lots of potholes that are being reported out there in the city, and I can filter those out and see where those are and kind of flash those in the map. So I'm clicking on them, you can see them flashing in purple there. So it's a pretty simple dashboard that has a lot of the same kinds of data that we were just looking at. There's no real-time analytics that's a part of this, but we are combining together that Esri traffic service and the Waze data as far as the Waze alerts, not the jams, just the Waze alerts, and we're pulling together in this particular dashboard. So I wanted to show you this to say, you know, if you're a smaller organization that just kind of wants to build one of these simple viewers, this is possible, but you can also do more of those sophisticated analytics like I was showing you with that Indiana dashboard using ArcGIS Enterprise. And with that, I'm going to turn it over to my colleague, Eric, and Eric has an even more sophisticated analysis for a dashboard for a project that he's working on with Colorado. So Eric?
Thanks, Tom. All right, let's go ahead and share my screen. Can everyone see my screen?
Yep, looks good.
Yeah. Great. So I had the opportunity about 5 months ago to work with the professional services division at Esri on a project with Colorado DOT. We're putting together 30 apps this year. And one of the apps that we were asked to put together was a traffic operations dashboard. And I had the opportunity back in October to sit down at the Traffic Operations Center in Golden and watch and observe the operators and the dispatchers work. And one of the things that I noticed almost immediately is how the operators would jump around from app to app. So for instance, they would have their application with all of their streaming cameras. And generally they had 3 screens in front of them with the big wall of screens, the theater wall of screens at the very front of the room. But basically on their 3 monitors, they would just jump back and forth between their streaming cameras, their weather. They would have a web browser up with Google Traffic. They might have another web map with weather.com, radar data, and they would have CoTrip, which is their 511, their public 511. showing them things like road conditions, construction, things like that, where their snowplows were. And they were just constantly moved back and forth between all these apps. And in addition, they might have another application showing them all their road forecasting and the weather, how they're treating their roads. So just all the jumping around they were doing, it made the workflows kind of tough for them, because it would be easy to get lost and lose track of where a particular app was or what tab was up last. So we noticed that in just watching these guys work with the apps, that they do a phenomenal job. There's a lot of stress with the job, but that was one thing we noticed that was kind of inefficient about it, was just how they had to jump around. So we took to the task of putting together this operations dashboard and the landing page I just showed you. And this landing page basically provides me with kind of the front end of where the application lives. So when someone from CDOT logs into the portal and they've got the proper credentials, they can get to this landing page and they can open up the information about the quick start guide, or they can get their help documentation, or they can get to a short video, or they can just jump right into the app like I did. So when we jump into the app, you see quite a bit of data here. Like Tom's app, we see Waze alerts. And again, very similar, I see accidents, I see road hazards, and I can see everything for the last 10 minutes, 20 minutes, or 30 minutes. So that's generally the kind of time ranges that the traffic operations folks work within. So we can go back and we can see any event, and these are incidents, right? So if I'm driving down the road with Waze, with the Waze app up on my phone, and I report an incident and 3 other cars behind me report the same incident, we'll see that repeat in this list, just like it would repeat on the Waze map as well. So very similar in how it all works, but I can click on an incident and I can zoom right into it, and I can see everything like road conditions, and I can see, and it looks like that incident just cleared. So unlucky me, but we can see all the different incidents that are going on. We can see there's one that hazard on the side of the road, and I can pull up things like the cameras, and this is a static camera. So in the static camera, we just get a static snapshot, and I can click and I can kind of look at the different views of the cameras that are available to me. I can pull up things like my digital message boards. I can also pull up here incidents as well. As you can see, I've got the here traffic underneath my Waze data, and like Tom showed, the two work almost hand in hand with each other. We've seen accidents happen, and then you'll just see the lines go from green to yellow to red almost immediately as traffic starts to build up. As I zoom out, we can see other things as well. We can see road conditions, and these are road conditions as being reported by CoTrip, along with their CoTrip road closures and road work. And so these cones, like this cone here, represents a type of road work that's going on in the state. And this work has been going on since May, or it's going on until May rather. And we can see where it's happening, what's being done, and when it was updated last. And so every 5 minutes or so, we are updating those CoTrip alerts, pulling in new alerts, and we're using the GeoEventServer to help facilitate all that movement of data. We're also using GeoEventServer to store all the Waze data. So we're storing the data for prosperity and analysis. But in this app, we're only pulling in the last 30 minutes. So this app is quite snappy, whereas if we wanted to look at this historical view of everything going back since we started collecting data in June, we have that ability if we need to go back and do analysis later on. In addition, you'll notice if I turn on the layers tab, I've got other layers as well. I can turn on weather, I can turn on the National Weather Service, or I can just click on the tab and I can see what's going on. So in my tab here on the weather tab, we're seeing the same layers, just a different view. So if I wanted to look at things like weather watches, I can see all the weather watches impacting the state of Colorado. So we're doing a spatial, basically a spatial overlay with the state of Colorado, and any incidents that intersect it, we're flagging those and putting them in this list. So we can see every single incident that's going on. I can click on the incident. I can click on the link, and that takes me to the National Weather Service text advisory describing what's going on with that storm in Grand Junction, or that weather watch in Grand Junction. So I've got everything at my fingertips. My traffic operators that I'm helping, that we're supporting, one of the biggest things that they noted was they didn't have to jump around from app to app anymore. They could keep one app up on the screen, and if they need their cameras, they have those up on the other screen, and they can just jump back and forth without ever having to pull up a new tab or pull up a new view of what's going on. They've got everything in one place, all their traffic data, Waze incidents which they've never had before, and they've also got all of their co-trip incidents as well. So it's all one-stop shopping. And for things like weather and traffic and Waze, Waze is statewide. We're pulling in a statewide view of Waze, but we've got the national view of weather, and then we've got the national view of traffic. So what this allows CDOT to do is they can actually report incidents to other states. So I think in the case of Waze, we go about 5 to 10 miles inside the other states on the border of Colorado. So if there's an incident in Wyoming and Wyoming doesn't know about it, our operators can call them as a courtesy just to let them know that, hey, you've got an incident here on I-25, and they can go out and investigate it. And they have found a few things in Utah, in some of the eastern parts of Utah where it's a little bit remote and there's not a lot of urban areas. So they've been able to find some things there. And in addition, they've also found some things in their own neck of the woods, like along the Eisenhower Tunnel. So when we get out near Frisco and Silverthorne in the Eisenhower Tunnel, they found a couple of incidents reported by drivers using Waze that wouldn't have otherwise been reported, and they've been able to help some motorists. They've also done the same thing in the areas around Colorado Springs. So this app has proven to be very timely and very useful, not just in terms of being able to see things on one screen, but they can actually find events that they never would have otherwise found before. In addition, we can see incidents. So I can see all of my here incidents that are reported. I can see here closures that have been reported. I can also see Waze delays. So if I click on a Waze delay, it's going to zoom me in and show me where the delay is and what the time frame is on that delay. And again, I've always got my camera, so we can take a picture. We can see there's a little bit of traffic here at this intersection. But we get a nice view into what is going on around the state, both in real-time traffic and weather. And like I said, if I can view the weather data separately, like I'm doing here in this weather tab, or I can just turn it on in the traffic tab if I want to see it. And I also have some other data as well, like I have all of my weather observations from my RWIS sensors. So in this list, so if I zoom out, you'll see all the RWIS sensors in green, these green weather vanes. But you'll also see the most significant weather watches where we're reporting either high winds, wet road conditions, freezing road conditions, or low friction readings. So you can see here as I start to scroll through, we've got a couple of weather sensors that are reporting. In this case, we've got one reporting a 0.37, which is a pretty low reading. Anything usually below 0.7 is where we start looking for wet road issues and slight precipitation on the roadway. So if we click on this guy, we can see exactly what's being read, and I've got the camera here as well, so I can pull up this camera, and currently there's no image available, but you get the idea here. I can see what the road conditions are. I can see that what the RWIS sensor is reading, and I can see also that we are in the weather watch area along, it looks like Colorado Route 139. So we do have some weather going on in this area, and I can see it all in one view. And that's really been a huge benefit to the operators and dispatchers, because not only now can they see everything in one place, but they're able to see a new data set in Waze, which is reporting things to them like hazards and accidents that they've never seen before. They can also pull in their National Weather Service watches on the map and see what counties those impact. And not just winter storm warnings, we can look at things like smoke, fog, We can look at high winds, all the things that would impact a motorist in some way. We can pull in all of those different feeds, tornadoes, thunderstorms. It's all we have the ability to pull it all together, and it's all available to us through ArcGIS Online and through Portal for ArcGIS, which is what we're using here to access this data. And it's just been a great it's been a great process. We're just coming out of prototyping. We're doing our last bit of documentation now. We're getting ready to start hardening the app, and probably in the next, I'd say 3 weeks to 4 weeks, we'll have this app in production and deployed to the operators around the state, so that they can start using it. And eventually this app is going to migrate. We're going to do another version of it for maintenance, and we're going to start to pull in their AVL feeds directly from the vendors. So all the vendors who provide AVL to the snowplows and their light fleet, we're going to start to pull that data in directly through GeoEvent and do analysis on it. We're also working with some other vendors right now to pull in their content as well, to give a little bit more depth to the types of data and types of analysis we're able to do. Right now, we're giving people the ability to view and react to incidents on the road, but pretty soon we'll be able to do analysis and inform people when things happen, like maybe a plow that's dropping too much material, or we could look at other things as well, like what the forecasting is along the roadway. So we're going to have some great opportunities to explore what's possible with all the data and the feeds coming into Colorado, and it's been a pretty exciting, pretty fun process building this application and deploying it to the operators at Colorado DOT. So with that, I'm going to turn it back to Tom.
Great. Hey, Eric, I have a couple of questions for you. Would you mind
Sure.
fielding some questions from me?
Not at all. Go ahead.
Yeah. So my first question is that dashboard that was created there. That looked a lot different than the one I had, but was that just a configuration of the operations dashboard, or do you have to do any customization in order to get that look and feel?
Yeah, good question. So basically we started with the same basic configuration as what you showed with the Indiana dashboard. And this application is using the operations dashboard as well. And it was all 100% configurable. Where we spent most of our work was on the back end with GeoEventServer, pulling in all the XML feeds from CoTrip, that the feeds that provide things like the RWiz data, the CoTrip incidents and road construction and road conditions. That's really where we spent the bulk of our time, getting all of that configured and pulled in so that the dashboard could consume it.
Awesome. Okay, thanks. That's kind of what I thought. One more question. That landing page, that first page that you showed, I mean, was that just basic HTML development to build that?
Actually, all configurable as well using enterprise sites. So again, this technology is available in ArcGIS Online through Open Data as well. We can deploy a site and or a page. I think we call it a page in ArcGIS Online, but we can deploy this configurable page. And we took and basically came up with this pattern where we built a landing page for our application. We've got all the links for that application that are relevant to it, like the help document, the video, whatnot. And then in our application, we can jump back to this page as well. So we're actually doing this with all of our applications we're deploying to CDOT as a way to give them a starting point. And then as the pros get familiar with the apps, they'll probably use this less and less. But this is going to be the place where we communicate change to the applications and we communicate updates to applications as well. So it's given us that framework to basically communicate what's happening with the app and the central place to go to access it.
All right, cool, thanks.
Yep.
And I just, in full transparency, I didn't know the answers to those questions, but I wanted to. Thanks a lot, Eric. I really appreciate that.
No problem.
Can you see my ArcGIS Pro session here?
Yes.
Okay, great. So I wanted to wrap this up with a couple of different areas. One is just some additional analytics that can be done on this data. And then some research areas that we're working on for some different kind of real-time feeds from our partners, specifically dealing with connected vehicles. But the first bit of analysis I wanted to show here, I'm inside of ArcGIS Pro here, and we're developing up some different patterns along these lines for doing analytics on some of this data. And this is specifically the Waze data, and this is what I'm showing you in the map is the reported potholes for the area where I live. This is in Hamilton County, Indiana. It's for the entire state, but I'm just zoomed in here on this area. But this is where all the potholes that have been reported in February. So it's February 20th, and it's all the ones that have been reported this month. So there's quite a lot that's been reported. And the question I wanted to answer was, if we were going to have the biggest impact for potholes in this area, where should we start given all this data? And you can see there's definitely, you know, some areas where there's some clusters and things like that. But let's run some analytics to kind of figure out where is the best place for us to start repairing potholes based on this data. So with that, I ran some machine learning tools on this data to kind of take the data and cluster it and build these clusters of points that indicate, and the colors indicate what's been being grouped together. But that clustering algorithm is used to kind of help me understand which of these potholes I should group together and build these groups within the application that I do my analysis on. And from that, I then took that and created some buffers around those areas. And these buffers, and they might be difficult to see. Maybe I can zoom in here on this particular area right here. You can see these buffers just kind of create an additional level of grouping for all of these points so that they're in one contiguous area. One of the things when I've talked to folks that manage and deal with potholes in areas like this is that they want to go out to one section of roadway and they want to fix all the potholes on that particular area. So I created these buffers to group them together in these different areas. And the interesting thing that we can do with those is then begin to symbolize those by the number of potholes that are being reported in each one of those areas. And what you're seeing here is the larger symbols indicate more potholes that are in those specific areas. So this helps us to start to give us a way to prioritize where our pothole efforts should take place. Now, what we can do with that is drop that into a workforce for ArcGIS project. So I've created a workforce for ArcGIS project that has all the assignments within workforce. And what you see here is the priority that we put based on the number of Waze reports in each one of these areas. The red points represent those critical areas where we should start first. And then if I expand this, then the green is priority 2, the green with the white circle is, or I'm sorry, the green is priority 3, the green with the white circle is priority 2, and so forth. So we should start with these red and filled in green sections and then move on to some of the other sections. That will have the biggest impact for the public. Now, we can dispatch people using the Workforce app to those locations, and this is just the Workforce web application that's showing all those potholes repairs and their different priority and where they are. And then a field worker can take the let me share my phone here with the screen, and just a second, see where my phone is on the screen. My screen sharing for my phone isn't working right now, but our field workers can then take the mobile app that's associated with Workforce and take that out into the field and see those and respond to those events and see the incidents that they are close to. Let me see. We'll try one more time to see if I can get my phone shown on the screen here. And there we go. And there we go. All right. Sorry for the delay. This is a mobile worker would have a view like this. They could see just a list of potholes that needed to be repaired. And then if they wanted to see it based on that priority that I defined, they could sort it based on their priority. Or if they just want to see the ones that are closest to them at their current location, they can see that here. And then they can see where they are, and they can see these pothole repair out in the map. If they want to navigate to any of them, they can click on one here and navigate to that assignment and start repairing that particular pothole. So there, I showed you a couple of apps real quick, but I did the analysis. I generated a priority for where potholes should be repaired based on the number of people that responded to them in Waze. I then pushed that into a workforce for ArcGIS project, and that gave my mobile workers a list like this that they could use to go out and repair those potholes. So that's the part where we're showing you some of the analytics and operations that you can, actions that you can take on some of this data to actually respond to what the public is reporting via the Waze app. The last thing I want to show you is some kind of experimental work that we're doing in partnership with Here. Here has some new capabilities that they're starting to deliver for specifically reporting information that's coming from the vehicle itself. So the vehicle might respond, and this is only for certain manufacturers, and this is for some of the German manufacturers. Those cars are reporting information about what's happening on the roadway. Like if the windshield wipers are on, it's an indication that it's raining outside. To a central service, Here can aggregate that and provide a feed for that particular service. And what I'm showing you here is that feed for information coming from the cars itself within and configured in that same operations dashboard that you've been seeing for Indiana and Colorado. But in this case now it's showing that information that's coming right from the vehicle. So the vehicles are indicating where accidents are occurring, where there's a disabled vehicle, and other information that I wasn't getting from the Waze feeds for things like fog and other rain conditions to see where those are on the map. So this is just another one of the data feeds that we're thinking of, and Here is one vendor that we're looking at for pulling this information into the operations center. We're using the same back-end technology of GeoEventServer and the operations dashboard on the front end, but we're pulling this information in as well with the idea that within the traffic management center you could manage this data along with the Waze data and other data sets that we've been seeing in the rest of this demonstration. But this is kind of a direction that we're going, is working with our different partners and pulling in different feeds like this. So you'll see a lot more of this in the future coming along and being available within this environment. And with that, I will turn it back to you, Terry.
Yeah, thanks, Tom. Let me just briefly say, I think that in terms of the application that Tom was just displaying, increasingly we are going to really be pulling this type of information more and more from the vehicles. So certainly in the US, the requirements for DSRC, and again, the ability to really pull that information directly from the vehicles in a way that we would then just incorporate that information directly into these traffic operations centers and traffic operations dashboards. We've actually worked with Cisco to sort of demonstrate that capability. We did it in the context of Las Vegas. So anyway, with that, let me start. Again, you all have the ability to type in questions into the question bar, and we'll try to get to as many as we can. So first question, and Tom, I'll send it over to you. Do you absolutely have to have the GeoEvent server to take advantage of Waze data?
Good question. The answer is no. You don't absolutely need to have the GeoEventServer. There's a couple of different ways that you can leverage that Waze data. One is that you can just use that marketplace service and configure it within your dashboard. And that's probably the easiest thing. And the example I showed for Fishers had that example. So that's something that you can do. All you need is an ArcGIS Online subscription in order to do that. And you need to have signed the data agreement with Waze, so join their Connected Citizens program. So that's the first way. Another way is that there are some samples out on GeoNet where people have written some code with Python to pull in that Waze data and then display it within a dashboard. That's another way that people are pulling in that Waze data and then making it available in a dashboard like this. There's lots of posts on GeoNet for that. But then the third way is to use the GeoEventServer, and the GeoEventServer is going to add the ability to do real-time analytics with that. So in what I was showing with Indiana DOT, it was tagging those Waze alerts as they came in with geofences that I'd established for work zones around the state. And just to be clear, that those were just project areas that I got from the state. That's not, they don't have, real-time who's out in the road today. But if the DOT had that, then we could do that kind of real-time analytics with GeoEventServer and incorporate that in. So you've got lots of different options. Either just use this feature service from the marketplace, to writing some Python code to pull it in and maybe do some display with it, to using GeoEventServer and doing some real-time analytics.
Okay, all right, thanks. And on the Esri traffic service that you were showing for the NDOT application, are any of the attributes exposed, or do you have the ability to do filtering, change any of the color ramps and so forth?
No, that service is kind of just a basic display of the current traffic conditions. You don't have like underlying feature access to that service, but it does give you a good display of kind of what's happening on the roadway right now.
Okay, and sort of someone else had a slightly similar question: the difference between the HERE data that was used in the CDOT dashboard versus the Esri traffic service that was shown in the NDOT. You want to describe those differences?
They're actually the same service. It's the World Traffic Service from ArcGIS, and it's using HERE data.
Oh, so for CDOT, you're also then using the just the Esri World Traffic Service?
That's correct.
Okay. All right. And somebody wanted to know sort of about the approval process for the Waze data via the Esri Marketplace. Is that documented? And I think we are showing the link for that here. Is there good documentation on what you need to do vis-a-vis Waze to be able to access that data?
Yeah, all the information's out there, and there's a video out there on the Waze Connected Citizens program as well. So it's all out there on how to get access to.
Okay, and there was a sort of probably for CDOT, how much of the data is archived, and is the dashboard and the data, is that available to the public as well?
Yeah, so we're archiving the Waze data, and we've been going back since June. So all that data comes in through GeoEventServer. We have a service that our operations dashboard consumes, and that shows the last 30 minutes, up to the last 30 minutes of data. And then we also send another version of that service off to the spatiotemporal big data store. And that's the one where we're offloading all the data that comes in and archiving it. All the code trip data, that's already archived by CDOT, so we're not doing anything with that. We're just displaying it on the map. And currently that application is internal only for the traffic operators at the Traffic Operations Center. We are exploring the possibility of bringing a public version of that app out, but that will probably be later in the year.
Okay, and let's see. Someone was hoping that they might be able to look at a sort of a more detailed how to really sort of line by line. Do we have good documentation on the executive dashboard and how to link to these services, or should they reach out to one of you? How we want to respond for somebody that really wants to roll up their sleeves and start getting going on creating one of these dashboards?
Yeah, this is Tom Brenneman. You could definitely reach out to me or John Nystrom on that. I'd say that really the technology that we're talking about behind the scenes is the main technology that you're working with is the operations dashboard. That's the configurable dashboard that has that we used for all of this, and the link to the Waze data is probably a good place to start to kind of understand how to configure that dashboard and pull it in. But if you have any other questions, then you can reach out to John or myself, and we can help out with that.
Okay, and there was somebody was impressed with your pothole, and I agree that's sort of a unique example of how to be able to use the Waze data. The question would be, could you combine, the work orders together with the VRP solver from Network Analyst so that you could do optimized routing and so forth? Would you need Network Analyst, or is there a different way of doing that?
So if you wanted to do, to generate some pre-planned routes for your workers to go out, I think that's what the question is that once you've done that analysis, you may want to establish what's the best path, an optimized route for my workers to start from, and work through all of the stops. You could do that using the Network Analyst extension for sure. Then you could just deliver those as a list to your workers. The nice thing about just going the workforce and navigator route is it just makes it really simple, because with that analysis you have to know exactly where they're starting every day. Whereas if you give them the mobile device and just say, well, find the closest one to your location based on priority, it can find out the best route from there. So yeah, you could do either way. The way I did, using Navigator with Workforce to allow them to route to the next location, or you could use Network Analyst and kind of build out a list of stops and then pass those along to your workers.
And how about integration with a maintenance management system? How easy would it be to integrate that with, if I already have an existing maintenance management system, the ease of integration?
Yeah, the good question. How easy is this to integrate with other systems, other maintenance management systems? And it kind of depends on the system and how open it is for that kind of thing. I mean, this is pretty straightforward data as far as where these work orders are. I integrated with Workforce because that's a work management system that we create, and the integration is pretty straightforward. There's others. I know I heard of an example of one of our customers that is using CityWorks, and they're doing this exact workflow to push Waze data into CityWorks to create work orders. So it can be done there as well. It kind of just depends on the work order management systems. CityWorks is a kind of real easy, is built on ArcGIS, so it's very easy for us to integrate there as well. But for all the other vendors, then you kind of have to look at it as to how easy it is to generate work orders in those systems. But at least you have the locations and you have the information on where to start to push it into those systems. One of the things that I will say on that is another research project that we're kind of doing behind the scenes is kind of trying to figure out with Waze and how we can close the loop with the people who have submitted these Waze alerts once we've gone out and the city has actually, or the organization has gone out and responded to those alerts. So that's, don't hold your, that's something that we're working on, I should say. That's going on behind the scenes as some work that we're trying to do to make that straightforward.
Tom, I think it's kind of fair to point out too that our REST API, we do publish it, so you could publish those potholes out as a REST API for our work order management system to consume.
Yep, absolutely.
Okay. Another question, which is a really outstanding one, having to do with reducing duplicate data from Waze, and I know that other state DOTs and traffic operations centers have reported that you do get sort of multiple sort of almost an over-reporting from Waze. Any plans on our side? Can you discuss how we've looked at reducing the duplication of data from Waze?
Yeah, that is something that I did as part of that pothole analysis. Is a part of the analysis as I aggregated those points that were in the same location. And there's different kind of ways to think about that. In one sense, you kind of want to keep track of how many people have reported it from a confidence perspective. And Waze has some of that built in because within their app, people can confirm thumbs up a report. So if you see a pothole and you go over it, you can say, okay, yeah, that pothole's there, and confirm it, and it won't create another report for that. It'll just increase the confidence in that particular report. So that's happening a lot more in the Waze application itself. They've gotten a little bit better about that. But on our end, the kind of ways that we're dealing with is analysis after the fact. It is something that we're looking at with GeoEventServer as well. That's some of the analytics that we could do on the fly with that data. I don't have an example of that yet, but that's something that we're looking into for using GeoEventServer to dynamically aggregate those points together. And if we come up with a solution for that, we'll definitely share that with the community as well.
Okay, and this is a question for Eric. Eric, have you been able to measure the improved productivity from the CDOT application within the control centers? And I know that really hasn't gone live, but can you maybe talk about the feedback that you have that you've received so far?
Yeah, we've got a version of this out. It's an older version, probably one of our earliest prototypes. And like I said, from that prototype, they were able to find probably 7 or 8 accidents in or around the Eisenhower Tunnel and down in some of the mountainous areas around Colorado Springs. They've also identified a couple of issues out in Utah. The main thing is mostly just efficiency, work efficiency. They're not jumping around from app to app. They're not jumping around from tab to tab. They've got basically one map open. They've got their view of their cameras, in addition to the cameras that we've got streaming in. But they can do some things with their camera app, like control the tilt, zoom in, things like that we can't do with the operations dashboard or with the streaming cameras that's being provided to us through the operations dashboard. We don't have any ability to control that, but just having all that data together in one place, they've increased operational efficiency just because they're not jumping around. So I would say that's probably the biggest thing, is the operational efficiency and just some of the new identified incidents that they've found that they never had when they didn't have access to the HERE data or the Waze data.
Okay, and we have a final question real quick from, it looks like Jonathan Pollack over in Pima County, and he's wanting to know about flow data. So Jonathan, probably the best thing, why don't you just send us an email separately, and we'll point you to some sources on flow data. So with that, as we do have a couple of links here that we have, one is actually for the marketplace on the Waze data. We have another which is really will direct you to the executive, the dashboards and some other applications. And certainly we'd encourage you to reach out to John Nystrom to answer any questions. And with that, we'd like to thank you all for being on the call today. We hope you found it to be useful and informative. And again, the ability to see what we would think of as next generation traffic operations solutions and dashboards. So with that, thanks again. Thanks very much. And we'll talk to you next month.
Thank you.